You're right, they haven't had this discussion, and it must be said that the EU 27 are not united necessarily on the way forward. I think simply there are two options realistically now that will be presented to the EU Council Summit next week in Brussels. Given the fact that the UK government is now likely to request, in fact almost certainly going to request an extension to Article 15 no matter what happens. One will be a technical extension in some regards, essentially what the motion suggested last night, that the UK will stay in until June 30th, even if it's looking possible Theresa May's deal does pass in the next couple of weeks, simply because legislation will need to be passed, not just, it must be said, in the UK Parliament, but of course at the European Parliament too. Both parliaments need to ratify the withdrawal agreement in order for it to become law. So in those circumstances, would the EU be willing to offer Britain a technical extension of a couple of months? Yes, I think they would. No one, and they repeatedly say this, want to see the EU, so the UK, crash out of the European Union. It would also mean, of course, Britain would not take part in those EU elections. The tricky bit comes if it's very likely that Theresa May's deal will not get through Parliament. And in those circumstances, we heard from Donald Tusk yesterday, the Irish yesterday as well, suggesting that they would like to see a long extension. It would provide some form of certainty, but what it would mean is a restarting, essentially, of the negotiations. Simon Coveney, the Irish Foreign Minister, talking about up to 21 months. But be in no doubt, not everyone agrees with Simon Coveney or Donald Tusk. We know that Emmanuel Macron, for example, is pretty sceptical like this. Apparently the Italians are too. Manfred Weber, the man most likely to take over from Jean-Claude Juncker, is not at all in favour. He believes it just creates greater uncertainty for the European Union and means that Brexit just consumes EU debate for potentially the next couple of years to come.